Kyle,
Yes.
is that you clicking?
Oh, sorry. We have a timer in here. We turn off the air handler. We had this installed because it gets so loud in here. If you guys, when you return to meeting someday, you'll find that we turn off the air handler in the community room.
Oh, right.
I'm in my office today, so that's my ticking. Yes.
No problem.
It's like an old clock.
Makes me think about my mortality.
It's going backwards. Don't worry.
That's funny.
Talk tick. Yes.
It reminded me of a metronome.
That's a much more positive way of looking at it. Okay. We have 20 attendees. 21. See, increasing. I think it's time to start. So it's the today is March 15th. This is the GBOS regular meeting. The Girdwood Board of Supervisors, its committees and subcommittees are subject to the Alaska Open Meetings Act as found in Alaska Statute 44.62.310 and Anchorage Municipal Code 1.25 public meetings. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:02. Let's do a roll call first of all. My name is Mike Edgington. I'm co-chair of GBOS and Land Use Supervisor. Jerry.
My name is Jerry Fox. I am also co-chair and roads and utility supervisor.
Okay, Brianna.
Brianna Sullivan, Parks and Recreation and Cemetery Supervisor.
Okay, Erin.
Erin Boone, Fire Department Supervisor.
And James. You on James?
I don't see him yet. I'll text him.
Okay. Yep. So I don't have excused absence for James, so I'm sure he'll be on very shortly. Any disclosures anybody has for tonight's meeting? Any board members? Okay, I have one kind of disclosure. I've been working with Girdwood Bearware, which is covered by item 7. I hand over the chair briefly to you, Jerry.
I do not find that a conflict of interest working with a Bearware. Unless anybody else on the board has a problem with this, we will consider it not a conflict. And I will hand the chair back.
Okay, thank you. Other disclosures? We'll move on. Gender revisions. I would entertain a motion for approval of tonight's meeting agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda. That's for
Second.
And second by Brianna, thank you. Any discussion? So can we do this by assent, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, let's do this by voice assent. All those in favour? Aye.
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 Okay, I get 4. Any dissent? Okay, that's like 4-0. Let's move on to meetings approval. The regular meeting on February the 15th. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from that meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the February 15th meeting minutes.
Thank you, Erin. Any second?
I will, Brianna.
Thanks, Brianna. Again, any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favour? Aye.
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 Any against? Hearing any, that passes 4-0. And finally, approval of the minutes from the February 23rd special meeting. Can I entertain a motion to approve?
I move to approve those.
Thanks, Brianna.
Second.
Second, Erin, thank you. Any discussion? Again, all those in favour say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Not hearing any opposition. That sounds like 4-0 as well. I'll go through announcements. The public is encouraged to ask questions and provide comment. Please raise your hand and wait to be acknowledged. Please keep your phone muted until called on to talk, or computer. To help discussion stay productive, please direct your comments to the board rather than other members of the public. and keep your comments focused on the business under discussion, and please be respectful of everyone's opinions. The Seward Highway and Alyeska Highway Intersection Improvement Concept Report is available for review. It's at the website Seward-Alyeska Highway Intersection.com, as shown in the agenda minutes. Move on to business introduction presentations and reports. So number one is the Department of Health COVID-19 vaccine info and Q&A. Who do we have to present that, Kyle?
Margaret, who was the presenter again? Can you tell me?
Hi, it's Lisa Rabinowitz.
Oh, hey, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
So
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm an emergency physician. I've been at Providence Hospital for almost 19 years now, but also working as a staff physician with public health on the COVID task force. So if it's okay, I'll just, if you can give me sharing capability, I'll run through a quick slideshow and then we can do a quick Q&A.
Here we go. Go for it.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, I might have to get on my sharing. I'll get off my screen and yours should come up.
Okay. Is that working? Can everyone see that?
I don't see it. Does
No,
anybody else?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's try this again. Okay. How about there?
I'm sorry, I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
Dr. Rabinowitz, I have the presentation pulled up. I can try.
Okay. Why don't you pull it up and I'll.
Okay.
Here, Tony, I'm going to make you a presenter so you can. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. All right. Are you seeing it?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent.
Perfect. So we'll just run through these quick slides, and you guys know a lot about COVID and COVID vaccines at this point, but we just want to kind of get on the same page in terms of offering support to the community and things that we can kind of tackle with misinformation or vaccine hesitancy. So that's kind of what I wanted to run through tonight. So go ahead, Tony. So kind of the 5 most important things with these COVID vaccines, we now have 3 of them, and they're very efficacious and very safe in all the studies. And so 89% as an average against severe COVID, including hospitalizations. No one who's had the COVID vaccine after the fully vaccinated is dying from COVID, which is very encouraging. So there are common side effects with getting the vaccine, and some of you that have had the vaccine know this. It's usually 1 to 2 days, sometimes 3 days, with kind of pain at the injection site, muscle aches, headache, fever, some fatigue. Usually Tylenol or ibuprofen kind of takes care of that. And that's really your immune system revving up. And so although it doesn't feel great, it's kind of encouraging because you know your immune system's doing what it needs to. Allergic reactions, it's been a big issue, and in Alaska we had some of the first cases in the United States. The whole federal government changed how they did vaccinations after a few cases that we had in Juneau. New training, everyone has EpiPens available where they do vaccinations, and we changed the observation to an additional so it's 30 minutes if you've had severe allergic reactions in the past. Someone who hasn't, it's 15, just so we can watch people a little bit closer. And as we kind of get in this phase now where we have enough vaccinations and it's very cool, we've opened it up to everybody, we now start to talk about herd immunity and what that means, and getting that rate up to 70 to 80% of our population is really where we stop the transmission of the virus. And especially with these variants coming out, that's even more important. So next slide, Tony. So as we talked about, everyone's eligible that lives or works in Alaska. So that includes kind of industry people, people coming up for the summer or seasonal work. Pfizer is okayed for 16 and above. Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are 18 and above. And as you know, Johnson & Johnson is 1 dose. And we can talk more about Johnson & Johnson in the Q&A if people have specific questions. And go ahead, Tony. So this is kind of an interesting slide and just a talking point. Although you're considered fully vaccinated 14 days after your second shot in a 2-course vaccine or after the first shot for Johnson & Johnson, your immunity continues to go up. And so even for Johnson & Johnson, we've seen at day 48, 49, there's been absolutely no cases. So when we look at efficacy rates and percentages, it's really important to realize that efficacy keeps going up. Okay, next slide, Tony. Thank you. So these are the new guidelines that came out within the last week, and it's kind of exciting because it helps us kind of keep our momentum and kind of seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So for fully vaccinated people, we're starting to relax some of those things where they can gather inside, unmasked with other vaccinated people or with one other household that's unvaccinated. And I think these will keep changing as more people get vaccinated and we figure out transmission rates and get in new data every week. So next slide, Tony. I think of these vaccines as just another tool in our tool belt, but really it's probably the most important one we have right now. But let's not forget, and Girdwood's been amazing about this as a community, but the masking, social distancing, hand washing, and just kind of promoting that as a community council. Okay, next slide. This is just a quick slide about testing, and in terms of all these vaccines, a lot of the questions we get are, how did this happen so quickly? How did they rush these through? And they went through all the phases of clinical trials. We're now technically in phase 4. And as of last week, there were 305 million doses in the world, over 70 million doses in the US. So we're getting so much data back now, and we're months into the vaccine train that there's been no new safety concerns, which is really encouraging. Next slide. So, is one vaccine better than the other? And the CDC and FDA has decided that one isn't better for one group or one type of geographic area. And so really the best vaccine is the one that you can get the quickest. And if you do have a preference, say for the Johnson & Johnson, the state website now is listing what vaccine they have. This is also really helpful for those 16 to 18-year-olds so they can take the Pfizer appointments that they're eligible for. Okay, next slide. A couple things on safety. The one on the left is called VAERS, and that's a national reporting database. We've had a lot of stuff in our media about that. That's any adverse thing that happens around a vaccine. The day of, the next day, a month later, we're reporting everything into that, and that's just our safety check for us to make sure we're not missing any safety issues that arise. On the right-hand side is V-Safe. It's like a personal one that you kind of check in on your symptoms after you receive the vaccine. And at the very bottom is just talking about the anaphylaxis that we have training and response at each site. Okay, next slide. So kind of what to expect at your appointment, and we know that now the Girdwood Clinic is giving vaccines, which is really exciting. The vaccines are free. For all of the mass vaccination sites, you just kind of walk in. For some of these federal pharmacies, they will take your insurance to pay for their administration fee, but the vaccine itself is free. The federal government has paid for that. Just remembering wearing your mask, doing all those things when you do go for your appointment. Okay, next slide. So the very top is the website to make appointments, and it's a hard website to navigate, I can tell you. It's gotten a little bit easier, but it's not super user friendly. There's also this number, the hotline to call if you're having any difficulty, or if someone's elderly, doesn't have a computer, or for any other issues, that hotline has a live person on it. It's important just to remember we're vaccinating for ourselves, but we're vaccinating for your family, your coworkers, your community. Next slide. So I think we'll just open it up to questions and see if there's anything that I can answer or any issues that have come up in Girdwood that the state can kind of support with.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rabinovitz. I've got a couple of quick questions, and then we'll open it up. The first one is, I hear that there will be some studies on younger adults, so 12 to 16. Do you know what the progress of that is and when we would perhaps expect a lower age range?
Yeah, so all of the 3 vaccines that have been approved right now are in studies with 12 to 16 or 12 to 18 years old. We expect those, they haven't given us a timeline, but sometime within the next few months. There's also a couple of them are starting to do studies on 6 months and above. That will be a little delayed because they'll be very cautious with those really small children.
Thank you. And the other thing is I see lots of confusion about what the efficacy numbers mean. I've seen, 94% means that 6% of people got the virus. What does it actually mean?
So that's a great question. And the reason it's so confusing is each of the drug companies had different endpoints for their efficacy. Some were, did you get symptoms of COVID and have a positive test? Some were, did you just have a positive test? So that makes it really confusing. The other thing that you have to keep in mind, especially as Johnson & Johnson Janssen rolled out, as we're comparing percentages, it rolled out at a different time when there was a lot more virus circulating and a lot more variants. And 2 of the places they tested it in, other than the US, were Brazil and South Africa, which had a large amount of variants. So basically in all the lab data and the stuff we're collecting, they're going to be pretty equivocal by the time Johnson & Johnson gets to that 28 and then 48 day from what we're seeing.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
I had a question. Yeah, I was wondering about, I heard you mention that it's okay to take ibuprofen if you have side effects after the vaccine. I had heard or read somewhere that ibuprofen might interfere with the vaccine working, but is that if you take it beforehand or what?
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of theoretical, but we're asking people don't take it in anticipation of having the sore arm. But if you do get it, you can take Tylenol and ibuprofen. And it's just that taking it ahead of time could blunt your immune response. So that's a great question.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Any other question from the board or the public?
Guys are going easy on me.
I'm not seeing any, so I will ask a question. Obviously there are people who don't like or are concerned about vaccines either in general, this set specifically. If there is a higher degree of vaccine reticency than ideal, what will the impact of that be in our communities?
So that's exactly, and I think it becomes a financial issue as businesses can't open. Somewhere like Girdwood that has a lot of seasonal fluctuations with workers coming in, it affects that if we can't open up things and get people vaccinated. It also affects our elderly and our most at-risk people in the community. So I think there's health compromise, there's financial, and then jobs, all those things that you guys are worried about as a community council make it that much more important to vaccinate.
Thank you.
And I'll put my state email in the chat box. So if things come up or people have specific questions that they want to ask offline or anything comes up for Girdwood, please feel free to reach out to me and I'm happy to kind of help with everything. And Tony will put a couple of resources in the chat box as well.
Great. I also see a question from Jerry. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Jerry.
quick question. I have got my 2 shots and have had my 2 weeks and my wife has not. What do you think the possibility of me giving it to my wife by going out in the community is?
The million-dollar question, Jerry. Yeah, we don't really know yet. We're collecting all that transmission data. There was a lot of concern initially that you could still be transmitting it, and we didn't know how much. In the data that we're starting to get over the last month, it looks like transmission is going to be a lot less than we thought, which is encouraging. It's still a risk. You could still bring it back to her and not know it. But I think that risk is getting smaller and smaller as we're getting more data. And in the next month or so, we should have new guidelines kind of around that. I think, you know, when you do go out, even though you're vaccinated, to cut down on that risk, because she is not vaccinated, doing all those things, continue masking, social distancing, staying away from crowded or tight places.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so I will say thank you very much indeed, Dr. Rabinovitz and Tony. Thank you.
Thanks for having
again,
me.
we have contact information if anyone individually wants to follow up. Thanks again.
Thanks so much. Good night.
Bye. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, which is the Anagaska Highway Seward Highway Update 1. Are you on?
Yes. Hi,
Excellent.
everyone.
Off you go.
All right, I'm back on camera. Thanks for having us back. The last time we were here for this project was September 21st, and a few things have happened since then. We've done a lot of work, and we had a series of public meetings that I know I've seen many of you at. For example, the November 18th Transportation Fair. We had the public open house December 10th. We submitted the concept report that you talked about earlier to the Planning and Zoning Commission just a few weeks ago on March 1st. And then we also had the Kenai Transportation Fair on February 25th. So we're back, and we have another public open house coming up April 22nd. I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're going to send out postcards, invites. It'll be another virtual public meeting like we did last time. And actually, Kyle, would it be possible for Mark Rudiger to share his screen if you could give him permission? I'm going to give you a little teaser opening, and then Mark has some conceptual alternatives he wants to show you. And that's what we're going to cover in our April 22nd meeting. So these are just newly developed. They don't have any engineering analysis to them. We haven't done any like substantial reviews or analysis or even talk about pros and cons. It's mostly conceptual in nature, just different options and solutions we're looking at for the intersection. So Mark's going to provide the teaser, and then April 22nd, we'll have 2 hours to go over all the different options with you and dedicate those 2 hours for an overview. We'll have in-depth engineering analysis at that time. So Mark's here. We've got Christina Huber, DOT, our project manager, and also Jeannie Bowie from Kinney Engineering, who's supporting the transportation engineering analysis. And then Derek Christensen is also here from Michael Baker, and he can answer any questions you may have tonight. Preliminary questions only, please. And then Tim Gurry here is also here to help to respond to anything, and he's the project manager from R&M. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark. He's going to give you an overview, and then we might have time for a couple questions, but keep in mind we will meet with you for 2 full hours, April 22nd. Thank you.
Thanks, Juan. Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs up? All right.
Yes.
Cool. So like Juan said, and as you may remember from the last meeting, my name is Mark Frudiger. I work for R&M Consultants, and I'm the lead project engineer for the Seward Highway Alyeska Highway project. Like Juan said, I'm going to give you a teaser into the alternative, the conceptual alternatives that we've been working on since we last met with you. But let me start out real quick with a recap of some of the major issues that we identified, and this information is contained in the concept report. So if you go to that link that's on your agenda, you can read all the details. But I want to give you a quick recap of some of the issues that were identified, in that process. They are local roads being used as a bypass, poor access to and from Old Girdwood. The Girdwood Station Mall generates a significant number of pass-by trips, which causes congestion due to close proximity driveways and direct access to the highway. Angle crashes between southbound left turning vehicles and westbound through vehicles. This is being contributed by large vehicles passing on the parking on the shoulder just adjacent to the mall, which causes sight distance issues. And then of course we have high seasonal traffic variations and poor level of service for southbound left turning vehicles, southbound being on Alyeska headed south towards the Seward Highway. And then another thing that we heard is that the view shed is very important to folks who live in Old Girdwood. So we've developed some conceptual alternatives, each of which will be evaluated on the basis of how well they address the identified deficiencies, as well as criteria such as corridor impacts, meaning the footprint, cost, and other things. And that is something we're going to be doing. We haven't done that yet. We really haven't gotten started with that, but we plan on doing that. And like Juan said, be able to share more detailed information with you at the open house next month. So I got a series of figures here up on screen. I assume you can see the first one. It's labeled conceptual alternative number 1, no build. I know it's not very exciting because it kind of shows the intersection as it is today, but it's something that we have to do per the National Environmental Policy Act process, the NEPA process. We have to be able to compare any build alternative to the no build or do nothing alternative. Obviously, this means that the intersection remains as is and the identified deficiencies are expected to exacerbate over time. No shock there, right? All right, conceptual alternative number 2, signalize existing intersection. This is not much different from the alternative 1, but it does add a traffic signal to the intersection, however, makes no other improvements to the intersection. So simply a traffic signal right here, as you can see on this figure. All right, now it's going to get a little more interesting. Alternative 3, improved signalized intersection. This realigns Alyeska Highway for more offset or more space to the mall, and it adds a traffic signal at the Seward Highway Alyeska Highway intersection. What's shown is combined with local road improvements and access consolidation around the mall to move intersection conflicts as far as possible away from the main intersection. What you see here in this portion of the figure, I consider these to be building blocks that could be added or subtracted from any of the alternatives that you're going to see in subsequent slides. It adds access control at Main Street. That's another building block that could be tweaked. For example, right now we're showing a right-in, right-out solution here. This could be a right-in only solution with one way, or it could be a different type of control. This is just one example of many different combinations that are possible here. This particular figure shows kind of markings on Seward Highway. You know, we could do something different here to prevent left turns by adding some kind of physical barrier to prevent left turns out of Main Street. All those things, all those details I mentioned, all the evaluation and stuff, that's something we haven't done yet, and we're gonna be looking at over the next month before the next public meeting. But I just want to give you an idea and a sense of kind of what we're looking at and what we're going to be studying in greater detail. Okay, next alternative, number 4, continuous flow, also known as a displaced left turn. I'd like to draw your attention to the upper left corner of the figure. That's kind of the uniqueness of this alternative here. It's sort of like the previous alternative, but the Seward Highway to Alyeska Highway left turn, so coming from Anchorage going up Alyeska Highway, is accomplished in 2 steps. You first have a signal here, you stop, and then when you have a green, you go here, and then you stop again, and then you take a left. At each stage, the conflict is only one direction. So what that means is when you take this, when you're at this light and you proceed, there's only conflict with oncoming traffic. When you're at this location and you turn left, the only conflict is with this left turning traffic. As the intersection is today, or just the enhanced with the light down here, you face conflicts from both the opposing direction as well as the Seward Highway southbound direction. So the displaced left turn essentially spreads out the conflict points, and it's also more efficient in terms of signal phasing. But it is unique, I'll give you that. Alternative 5 is a continuous green, that's what it's called. It's similar to alternative 3, which is the simple signal, but the signal at Seward Highway only stops Anchorage bound or northbound traffic and left turning Alyeska traffic. Seward bound has a constant green with a left merge for left turning Alyeska traffic. So what that means is if you're headed to Seward and you want to bypass the intersection, this movement here is green at all times. The only the only movement that gets stopped is either the left turning traffic onto Alyeska or the left turning traffic off of Alyeska. For the latter, the left turning traffic off Alyeska, you would merge into the traffic flow here. But again, the important point to remember is the Seward bound or southbound traffic does not stop, so that's a constant green, hence the name. Okay, alternative number 6, separated highway, future grade separation. This separates the Seward Highway in anticipation of a future divided highway with a grade separation. If you can remember in Anchorage, the intersection of C Street and O'Malley, which for a long time was basically this configuration here, and then about 15 years ago, it was completed by completing the overpass over the intersection. So this is a sort of a situation like that. It requires a bridge over Glacier Creek. Left turns from Alyeska would be 2-step, meaning you stop here, or in the detailed view, you stop here. You only have to look one way, traffic going this way. Once you have a green light, or if it's a stop, or it could be stop controlled, or it could be a signal, you proceed down here. And in here, same thing. If you're turning left, you only have to look in one direction. Traffic's only coming from this side. This leg right here would increase the queue storage for those peak times when there's a lot of cars trying to turn left to go towards the Kenai Peninsula. Okay, alternative number 7, the Trumpet Interchange. All left turns are grade separated and elevated across the Seward Highway. The bridge, which is the blue element right here, is long enough to accommodate a future divided Seward Highway. And it includes improved access to Gold Avenue via a roundabout. Again, this is kind of that set of building blocks I was talking about at the beginning. We could take bits and pieces of that depending on what our evaluation shows is necessary to make the whole system work. Alternative number 9, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Alternative number 8 is a series of roundabouts. It's a large roundabout on Seward Highway with high-speed approaches, and then a second roundabout at Gold Avenue, kind of like you saw in the last alternative. Free ride for Alyeska to Anchorage traffic, similar to the way it is today. And one sort of sub-alternative that we could consider here is a bypass for Seward-bound traffic, so that they wouldn't have to navigate the roundabout, but could essentially bypass the roundabout south of it. The next alternative, the tight diamond. This accomplishes all left turns elevated above the Seward Highway over the bridge, again shown in blue, similar to alternative number 7. The on and off ramps are tight against the Seward Highway, hence the name. You can see here, so you'd be coming on the Seward Highway from Anchorage, and you want to turn left onto Alyeska, you would go up a ramp, and then you would take a left and cross over the Seward Highway. Conversely, if you're coming from Alyeska Highway towards Seward, you'd go across the Seward Highway, and then you would ramp down and merge with traffic down below at grade again. The version we have shown here requires retaining walls to keep the footprint small, and also be able to live up to its name, tight. You know, it has to be close to the Seward Highway, hence we can't have a slope. We'd have to have a vertical retaining wall. And then the last figure here is basically a detailed view of some of the consolidation and circulation improvements that could be made to the local road network around the Girdwood Station Mall. You know, this could include upgrades to Gold, Main Street, intersection improvements, better access to the Girdwood Station Mall, or a different type of a concept for circulating through the mall. Again, this is kind of a concept that could take on a number of different forms and could be combined either as a whole or in bits and pieces to any of the major Alyeska Seward Highway improvement alternatives I showed you earlier. Okay, one alternative that I wasn't able to show you a picture for is a frontage road. That's something that would basically take the Seward Highway and push it south towards the inlet, and you would have a frontage road on the north side of the Seward Highway that would handle the traffic probably from Glacier Creek all the way to Toadstool, and then the local road access to Main Street and the Girdwood Station Mall access, and as well as Alyeska Highway. And then that frontage road would in some fashion join the Seward Highway on either end, on the east and the west side. Okay, that's about what we have today. I guess we're open for questions, comments and questions. Like Juan said, we haven't gotten very detailed into the analysis and engineering yet. So we're happy to take your questions, but we may have to get back to you if it's an in-depth question before the next open house.
Okay.
Any questions?
Yeah, just one question. What is the next step? Do we have the open house on the 22nd?
The next step is, yeah, exactly, Mike. The next step is the open house on the 22nd, and what our team plans to do between now and then is to start looking at these alternatives. You know, we got about 9 right now. That's a pretty big number of alternatives. We're going to start looking at these, and we're going to come up with criteria of how to compare them against each other, and then we're going to start evaluating them and see which ones fit the purpose and need that we're set out to accomplish better. And then the hope is to be able to come to the open house in about a month or so with some results of that evaluation. Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation. I've got some questions, but I'm going to hold them to the open house. I saw Erin, and briefly I saw Jerry. Who wants to start, Erin?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I just wanted to say thanks for coming and presenting to us, you know, outside of the bigger milestones. It's helpful to see it multiple times and to give the most people the opportunity to see it along the way. So thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
Did you have a question, Jerry? I saw your hand up briefly.
Well, I did, and then I saw Kyle's hand up. I thought Kyle's maybe going to ask the same question. When we talked the last time, we asked about where the intersection of Alyeska and the railroad goes, and we're specifically about if we could incorporate somehow the Iditarod Trail that comes, the lower Iditarod that comes down there and goes towards Bird. Does this project go as far as the railroad?
Yeah, I'll try to answer that. Right now, kind of our project limits are from the railroad bridge south. So we haven't really been looking, you know, past that point. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, essentially no, is what you're saying. And yeah, so I mean, that's just something we were hoping that we could fit into this project, or at least, you know, if we could somehow coordinate with the project if it was a different project or something.
You know, one of the things we're definitely going to have to look at as far as non-motorized is concerned is how to tie the existing pathway that's here currently into the project itself. You know, I think what you're referring to is more on this side of the railroad here, and might be outside the scope of this project, you know, but at this point we haven't ruled it out.
Okay.
Okay.
If you could keep it in, that'd be great. Thanks.
Kyle, you had your hands up.
Yeah, and yeah, that was part of my question. But the other aspect was, and I appreciate you guys thinking big on this with all these different alternatives, because it is quite a beast to figure out. Is with the Golden Main, as you're doing your, as you start to get in more detail with the engineering on that, is to think about the drainage patterns in there and how you guys can address it. The electrical station there, it's just a low spot and it catches a lot of water. And we've been evaluating how to get that water across the road. And then the other aspect about it is right through the middle of the Tesoro Island, as I call it, there's a drainage system that runs through there and captures water off Gold. But we've been trying to address this with, since it is a private system that collects public water, we've been trying to get them to help us address the drainage through there. So that'll be something to look at there, because it does need cleaning. And if a redesign goes, maybe we can avoid using that drainage system.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. That's a very good point. I recognized that not too long ago that there was an alley was vacated some time ago that contained the drainage system that runs through the middle of that parcel. And yeah, it's kind of it's a tough situation, right? It conveys public water, but there's no access, no legal access for the public to maintain it, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, that's we acknowledge it. Thanks for the comment, and we're aware of it.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from the board? If not, any other questions from the public?
There was a question in the chat there, Mike.
Okay, I didn't see that. Sorry, if whoever it is could put their hand up. Or from Karen. Do you want to ask the question directly, Karen?
No, I think I can wait until open house. That's probably more appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If you could put your hand up and ask the question, because the chat isn't typically part of our log. Okay, I do not see any other hands up. Any other questions? Again, thank you very much for the presentation, and I look forward to hearing more about it and asking many more questions on April 22nd.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 3, which is the legislative report. If there's any representatives for Senator Holland or Representative Kaufman, or our 2 assembly members, John Welton and Susan LaFrance.
I'm here to represent Representative Kaufman. If you'd like me to give a little legislative update.
Sure, if you could just identify yourself. I didn't.
Yeah, Matthew Harvey.
Matthew,
I'm the chief
hi,
of
Matthew.
staff for Representative Kaufman.
Thank you. Yeah, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember where I was at last time I presented here, but because I think I attended because he was in a committee meeting last time as well, but he's in a Labor and Commerce meeting tonight that started at 6:30, and they should be getting done around 8:30 today. But the focus now is around finance subcommittees. So we have a Labor and Commerce Standing Committee and a State Affairs Standing Committee. And during the budgeting process on the House Representative side, the committee members for the standing committees are assigned subcommittees for kind of deep dives into departmental budgets. So those operating budgets that we're looking at are Department of Administration, the Department of Revenue, the Department of Administration, Department of Revenue, Department of Labor and Workforce Development, and then the Department of Environmental Conservation. So earlier today, we were reviewing some of the amendments that were submitted by subcommittee members to the Department of Revenue operating budget, and those are looking at changes that each department or the governor's budget request is requesting changes from last year's baseline budget. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. And we're trying to get all of those subcommittee reports on the operating budget changes done by the end of next week. And then that is the subcommittee reports that are the outputs of those meetings are going to go to the larger House Finance Committee, who's going to come up with the House budget to send to the floor to get voted on. So right now, that's kind of our focus is getting through the budgeting process as quickly as possible. But at the same time, those standing committees are also going on with the schedules being changed a little bit. And that's why the meeting's so late today. And there are still bills being heard alongside of the budgeting process. So kind of the focus with some of the bills, like the bills that are being heard right now, there's vocational training bills, workers' compensation bills, and those are kind of 2 of the main focus areas, especially with labor and workforce development being one of our committees. If you guys have any specific questions, I know I kind of keep it at a little bit of a high level with these, but if you guys have any specific questions, I'd love to get into those as well. But that's kind of my high level overview of being the focus of labor and workforce development and labor and commerce and state affairs.
I see Jerry, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks for being here, Matthew. Senator Kaufman received an email today from our assembly members stating their support for a new child care facility in Girdwood, and it trying to be on the capital projects list. And I know there's with the new American Relief or American Recovery Plan, there is capital money coming to the state. I know there's capital money in Department of Health and Social Services that's for child care. And there may be a omnibus bond, capital bond passed. And I'm not sure which is the best way to fund this, but child care, I'd just like you to take back to Senator Kaufman that this child care facility is very important to Girdwood. And we'd like it to get on the capital list if possible, whichever one seems to work best. I mean, we tried to pass a bond last year to pay for it ourselves in Girdwood, and the bond passed overwhelmingly in Girdwood, but it did not pass in all over Anchorage, so we couldn't use that bond process. And we have a couple other big projects here that we can't seem to finance that we'd like to, both of them being road projects. One of them is kind of road project. One of them is our industrial park and finishing it, which would be a great economic benefit to Girdwood if we could get some money to help finish that. And the other one is the road that kind of goes from Egloff down to Corolius. So we've got some capital issues that we're looking for funding. So whatever he can do to help us on those issues, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, so we unfortunately the capital project deadline was 5 p.m. today. We did kind of fast track some information to get it on the list for the childcare facility, and then there are a number of other capital project requests that we got from places. I know Challenge Alaska was one that we put in a capital project request for, and the process with that. So when I was talking about the finance subcommittees, the focus on those is on operating budget, and then with regards to capital projects, there's a capital projects system called CapSys, which you put in all the project information and funding information and requests and project justification and project information, and it goes into a project list, which there's two co-chairs on the House Finance Committee. One of them has an operating budget focus and one of them has a capital budget focus. And after the deadline of that, the capital project request deadline, the capital project co-chair will go in and look at all the different project justifications and funding amounts. And she has a number of project prioritization and selection criteria. And so she'll kind of, along with the House Finance Committee members, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I don't tell you the wrong information, but all the House Finance Committee members along, and she'll lead that process, will choose a number of capital projects to make it into the capital project budget for the year. And the size of that capital project budget kind of depends on a number of things. This year, it's not going to be huge, just kind of because of the current situation, state of the state. But we did get a number of those into that list to be deliberated on by the capital co-chair. I know that's probably not the best answer for someone like the road projects. I'm not sure if they got on, but the child care facility and a few nonprofits who have facilities in Girdwood did have a few projects that made it on that list.
So I think, Matthew, I think what you're describing is the excludes the money that's coming from the American Rescue Plan Act. Is there a process? Does it look like there's a process in place yet for dealing with that allocation, which obviously is much larger?
There will be a process for that, depending on how much money we get and where that money is, where we're able to allocate that money. Or we're not 100% sure of the details on that yet. But some of that, there is a possibility that some of that would go to capital projects, and then some of those extra things may get funded. We're just not sure about the details and where that's going to go yet.
Yeah, I think my understanding is there's 150 billion or 150 million or so, I think, allocated to capital, and the rest is has less restriction.
Yeah, that's one thing. Being here, it's a lot of this stuff has tags on it, you know.
Right.
So kind of understanding the details of what's tagged to what, and then what, you know, falls under that tag, and then what is able to kind of be allocated as, I guess, with a little bit more freedom, if that makes sense. I know that's probably not the best answer, but well, the details are kind of getting sorted out.
Yeah, I think there were 3 buckets, and I think we just covered 2, and the other one is the possibility of bonding for capital projects. Are those projects already decided by the governor, or does the legislature have the opportunity to change those?
In his GO bond request, the governor's office bond request, he did cite a number of those projects, and I can post a link in the chat to kind of the list that he gave, but he did have a number of those with funding amounts cited or listed in his bond request. Yeah, so he had chosen those, and there's a process. I mean, you can also kind of submit amendments, and there's a little bit of back and forth there, but he had an initial list chosen and proposed.
Okay, so the way I'm reading your answer is there may be some flexibility, but limited flexibility in that. Sorry, Kerry, did I interrupt you?
No, I just had one quick other question. So who is the chair or the co-chair or the persons that is of the capital project? Is that Senator Merrick?
Yeah, Representative Kelly Merrick, so Eagle River.
Yeah, okay, thanks. That's all I had, thanks. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions from either board members or the public? Not seeing any hands, so I'll say thank you. We do have, I know that Assembly Member LaFrance wasn't able to make the earlier part of the meeting, but should be, actually I do see LaFrance says Anna France in the attendees list. Are you here?
I'm here, Mike.
Excellent. I wasn't expecting you until later. So,
well, my prior meeting adjourned a little bit faster than I thought. So, hello, nice to see all of you. And I'll go ahead and go through a few things. First off, I just wanted to convey appreciation to members of the community who testified at Tuesday's meeting on behalf of renaming the ball fields to Sladen Mall. And the testimony was very heartfelt and very moving, and I thought that was a very fitting tribute to rename those fields. So thank you all for your testimony and your efforts. We are, as you know, in the middle of the 2021 election season, and ballots were mailed out or have started to be mailed out today. In-person voting opens March 29th, and they're doing something a little bit different this year. The voting centers will be open until 6 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays as well, to provide more opportunity for people to vote. So that's a good thing. And concerning the emergency proclamation or declaration, the municipality's declaration is still in effect until April 16th, even though the state's has expired. Some of you, well, probably all of you know by now that EO 19 went into effect on Monday, and that last Monday it lifted capacity restrictions and eased gathering limits within the municipality. And the good news is that while the COVID-19 infection rate and the number of cases, they've recently increased within the municipality, but given the current and projected healthcare capacity and improved treatments and availability of vaccine, we've been able to continue to transition out of a state of emergency. We still have the local mask law and physical distancing requirements. I'm working with John Weddleton and Meg Zalatel on transitioning out of the emergency proclamation, and we're looking at any kinds of special authorities that may be needed. We're going to obviously have some enduring issues that may not constitute maintaining a state of emergency, but might require some more flexibility, like with procurement or telework arrangements. So we're taking a look on that so that we can continue to move towards fully, well, we've been saying new normal, moving away from a state of emergency. Just wanted to mention too that at the meeting on Tuesday, we approved a code change that clarifies the recognition of the Assembly as the legislative branch of government, and this was put forward by Chair Rivera and Vice Chair John Weddleton. The Alaska Constitution and statutes established a separation of powers structure, the executive and legislative, and it applies to local governments. And our charter says that the legislative power of Anchorage is vested in the Assembly. However, and the Ombudsman has observed this over the years, the Assembly has often been regarded as a department by the administration. And given that we have a strong mayor form of government, it's important to make clear that the Assembly is a separate and equally critical branch of government. So a new section of code was added, a small section, to clearly state that this legislative power is vested in the Assembly. Just a couple other things here. We postponed the vote on the school district budget for 2 weeks. And the reason we did that is because this year we need to pay for the school bond debt. You may recall that the governor's veto of the school bond debt reimbursement meant that we need to pay about $38 million, and that has come due this year. It's about $115 per $100,000 of valued property. And our thinking, or the thinking of a few of us on the Assembly, was that we need to go back to the legislature and have the conversation. It's a tough budget environment, I know, at the state level, but this is just not a good time to increase local taxes. I mean, given the difficulties with the pandemic, now we also have some funds coming in, and actually the American Rescue Plan money apparently can be used, as far as we know, for funding school bond debt reimbursement. That would be at the state level, but that's a good segue into the press release that came out earlier today from the Assembly chair. And following President Biden signing the American Rescue Plan Act, we have kicked off a very robust public process to determine how we should allocate our local portion of this money. We don't know how much that is, but it's going to be 2 phases, and the first phase of this process will be to review and assess the funding priority framework that we developed for the first time around with the CARES Act funds, and also the programs that we did fund. We want to know what worked and what didn't, and if there are ways we can get the money out to faster and to folks who really need it. So the first meeting will actually be this Friday, March 19th. It's an in-person work session from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the LUSAC chambers. And that phase will continue through March with likely an initial allocation of funds, a certain percentage, and then it'll be followed by phase 2, which will include more planning, public dialogue, and a final proposal on the allocations that are remaining. And that is expected to go through the end of April, actually. And I will just add one more thing, Mike. I know you have a lot on the agenda, is that back in January, we had a unanimous vote in the Assembly to formalize the relationship with the native village of Eklutna, which is the only federally recognized tribe in the Anchorage area. That resulted in a few things being codified, and that's representatives of Eklutna will get 5 minutes of time to speak at Assembly meetings. And we'll also have regular meetings between the native village of Eklutna and the Assembly, a minimum of 2 a year. And the first meeting is actually scheduled for Thursday, May 27th. It's a little bit out from 5 to 7 p.m. But it's good to see that moving forward, and there'll be a focus on communication and training as well to MOA employees. So this has nothing to do with the lawsuit or gaming, but rather just more communication and coordination with the native village of Eklutna. So thanks. I'll pause there or stop there.
Thank you very much, Assemblywoman. So any questions from the board or Jerry?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I just want to say thank you to Suzanne for helping with renaming of the ball field. And so the public knows she was extremely helpful at the last minute to make sure that we didn't run into any hiccups and spend some time on this. And I just really, really appreciate it. It's very important to us. So thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Jerry. Happy to help in the small way. You all did so much work on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? I'm not seeing any, and I just want to give one last check to see if there's any either John Weddleton or anybody representing Senator Holland on the call.
And Mike, John is at another community council meeting.
Okay.
I'm not sure if he'll be able to join afterwards, but we split. I went to this one first and he went to the other.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thanks again for your reports. We'll move on to item number 4, which is supervisor reports. So we'll start with public safety. I didn't see James. No, are you on the call, James?
No, James hasn't arrived.
Okay.
But I do have Chief O'Shea here, so he could
Yep.
Give an update. Chief?
Yeah, if we can. Chief O'Shea.
I see you unmuted.
We can't hear you.
Well, I'll fill in here. Maybe he'll get his mute figured out, or his mic. So since the last, we've had a public safety meeting here in the last month, and we had the follow-up. Chief was able to give us an update on all the stats for 2020, and then here in front of the screen, he provided the stats for this last 2 months. Oh, he's coming back in. Sometimes you have to relog back in as he comes in here. And we've worked with Whittier Police on several issues. Most recently, what we're looking into, and I spoke briefly with Andre today about this, Chief O'Shea, was that we had a 3-car accident on the Alyeska Highway last week, most likely result of a drunk driver, and they are pursuing that. The driver was called in at McHugh Creek through a Ready report, and the caller contacted dispatch 4 times. What we've learned in just the short period I've looked into it, we're going to look further into it, is that it seems like APD dispatch was handling the reports, but by the time the vehicle got here, it hadn't been relayed to Whittier, which meant it had to go to Cordova dispatch, which then dispatches out Whittier Police. Whittier Police first learned of it after the accident happened, but Chief was going to look further into that with his officers to confirm that and go. Andre, are you on?
Yes, could you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Yes, regarding the accident that happened last week, Wednesday on March 10th, I did talk to the case officer as well as double check with our dispatch center. The actual person that called it up when it was following the vehicle in the Girdwood area, they said they observed some signs of erratic driving prior to. And then while on the phone with our dispatch, Cordova dispatch, our dispatch center, observed the accident, then our officers got dispatched. We also contacted another witness that was on the scene of the 3-car collision there. And he's the one who stated that he contacted dispatch, which was APD at Potter's Marsh, and was advised that there was no officers in the area, allegedly. So what the biggest thing is generally when those Ready reports come in outside our service area, which our service area is Alyeska Highway and Girdwood service area, unless I have an officer already on the highway, we don't do it because we're not sure if they're going to turn to Bird or somewhere else. But in this particular situation, as soon as they turned into Girdwood, our dispatcher got the call. I'm guessing the second person that called, I don't believe it was the same person that initially called APD dispatch, was another person. She called us, our dispatch, up directly. And within, I believe, we got the call around 5:07 in the evening. And by the time the accident happened, a few minutes, while talking with our dispatcher, our officers were already en route from Whittier. Luckily, no serious injuries. Medics did transport 1 individual, and this case is under investigation. Prior to that, last week I did submitted our 2020 stats for your viewing, as well as I just submitted January 21 and February 21 stats this last week as well. Other than that, we're still doing business as usual out there. We're trying to help out as best we can. We try to do some modified shift coverages. So if you notice on some of our stats, there's a little bit more coverage in Girdwood, not as in coverage as in more than what's required. We're actually doing more than the required patrol coverage. by at least double. And that's because generally when officers are there, there's other activities they're observing while in the Girdwood area. But we still maintain with our level of staffing we're doing now, just try out. We're maintaining 2 patrol officers for a 12-hour period, so they have immediate backup, and then the other 12 hours is on-call basis, which usually in the early morning hours as needed. And I hope that answers some of the questions you guys may have.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Any questions from the board? I'm not seeing any. Any questions from the public? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you very much, Chief O'Shea. I know, is there anyone from Public Safety Advisory Committee who wants to say anything now? I see at least one member. Okay, we will move on to roads and utilities. Jerry.
Not too much. A little snow today. I know they're going to go out plowing tomorrow morning, and then we're going to have some sun for probably 5 or 6 days. The big things are the road contract is currently out to bid, and the bids will be open March 23rd. And the same thing goes for the Alberg Avenue repave. That project is currently out to bid, and it will also be open March 23rd. And that's all I have for roads. Thanks.
Okay. One quick question on that is, if the road contract is significantly different from what we budgeted for, do we have the opportunity to make first quarter revisions, or what would be the solution?
Stipulation of the contract is they're not supposed to exceed 700,000 in their bid proposal. So if we end up not having competitive bids and we have a low bid that's not meeting that, it still is down to myself managing the hourly use of equipment. So we'll just have to evaluate what the lowest bid looks like and how that plays into our normal operations for a year.
Okay, thank you. It's good to see we've got contingency. Any other questions from the board or the public? Right, okay. Let's move on to Parks and Recreation Cemetery, Brianna.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. The Girdwood Trails Committee had their meeting on the 1st of March, and they reviewed the GBOS public meeting standards of conduct, and they voted in favor of the GBOS resolution of support for the KMTA grant application for interpretive signage for Stumpy's Trail to be located off the Arlberg Extension parking area. The Girdwood Trails Committee voted in favor of the memorandum of understanding with Chugach State Park, effective upon signing until December 31st of 2025. Also from Kyle's update, no entity has been found to provide licensed insured maintenance and inspections for the hand tram, which are needed in order for the hand tram to be reopened. The bridge study is underway. The signage group is nearing completion of the lower Iditarod interpretive signs, which are slated for installation this coming summer, 2021. The Girdwood Valley Service Area Parks and Rec is planning to hire 4 positions this summer, which should be posted this month. The positions are mainly funded by CARES Act grant, and the Girdwood Valley Service Area staff are working on a plan to reroute the Virgin Creek Falls trailhead at the beginning of the trail. Also, the Trails Committee is working on a plan to formalize easements systematically over the coming years to protect existing trails. The master plan group and contractor are working to compile and analyze community input, and a draft of the Girdwood Trails master plan is expected to be released for review in late spring. So please send your comments if you have comments. Everything is up on the GBOS website for links with the Girdwood Trails master plan. And regarding the cemetery, the next meeting is April 1st at noon, and there's no update except for the next stage in building a cemetery in Girdwood to be successful. It needs to be a successful bond for Girdwood and Eagle River in the 2022 spring election. So this requires a strong citywide information campaign running up to the election next year. The cemetery committee members are asked to collect pertinent information, questions maybe that are going to be asked, facts, etc., that should be included in the cemetery committee's campaign. So if you have any ideas, comments, please email them to Margaret, and they will be included in the next meeting on April 1st at 12 p.m. Finally, I have something new to bring up that was brought to me by community members, and it's regarding porta potties for this summer, well, spring, summer, future in Girdwood. And then I had to definitely do my own asking around because Kyle obviously knows, and we've seen it in the budget reports of how many we had this past year with everything being closed. But basically, the need for them may be kind of unknown, but I think all of us know that when you come to Girdwood, you probably need to use something by the time you get here. And if you're going on a trail or you're going to the park, there's ample porta potties on one side of Alyeska Highway, but not the other. And to my knowledge, I don't know if people go and use the bathroom in the Merc, but on that side, when things are closed, there's nowhere to go. So the idea was somewhere around Town Park, and with renovations with the clinic and that being an amenity in the central part of Girdwood, somewhere in Town Park that doesn't stick out or look so bad with the nice flower arrangements that are worked hard on every year and not to be vandalized. So Kyle, you can take over anything that you've come up with since I asked you, but that's one thing I was wanting to bring up.
Sure, and we're looking into this request to see if we can fulfill that. We're definitely going to add a porta potty out to the 5K because it's become such a popular center out there, and that will go in May once the snow allows. And then, yeah, I think it's just trying to find a location in Town Square where it doesn't turn it into a construction site and a nuisance. And so, you know, Town Square is more to be a commercial civic area, and it's not very common to see public rent-a-cans in the center there as people walk around, especially where tourists might get right off for the first time. So we will continue to explore those options and see what we can do to make something work and make it an attractive feature to the downtown area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brianna. Any questions from the board or the public? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll move on to the next item, which is fire department. Erin.
I don't have much to update on. I was hoping that Chief or Kyle might be able to give an update on the contract negotiations and the first quarter budget review or possible revision.
Sure.
I know Chief Weston is out at the moment, so I don't see her on. So Kyle?
Correct. She's on personal leave and scheduled planned leave. And as for the first quarter revisions, we have submitted them. We've all we've heard so far is support for those revisions. OMB contacted us, and what we're talking about here is an increase the EMS funding for the Girdwood Fire Department that comes from the area-wide funding. So that's funding that's funded by all the residents of Anchorage, and mostly through other revenue sources besides property tax. And so what we've heard so far is it looks like a $300,000 increase is possible, which would bring up their total funding, which now has been at $207,000 for probably 15 years. That contribution that they receive for that now will bring it up to just over $500,000. And so we've heard it's gained support. And it's with the Department of Operations and Management, and they will be submitting those budget revisions to the mayor, and then the mayor will be submitting them to the assembly. Now that we're in election season, that tells you we start to get into these budgets, because usually the first assembly meeting of, in this case, the first assembly meeting where they certify the election, they usually at the same time review and approve the first quarter revision. So we will keep track on it. We haven't heard anything besides what I just told you, and so we see that as good news.
Thank you very much, Kyle. And I hope we get. I'm sure we will get support from our assembly members on that particular topic. Any questions from the public or the board on fire department? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we'll go on to land use. because we have a packed agenda, I'm not going to say very much. Majority of items are covered that we covered in land use are actually covered later on in this meeting. There's a written report at the end of the packet. I will give a quick update on housing working groups that didn't make it into the packet. We had a very interesting presentation on a wider analysis of accessory dwelling units, both across Anchorage and across the Pacific Northwest, by two researchers from the Sightline Institute. They did an analysis of our proposed changes as well and recommended some things which would probably make it better. So we did have the goal of at least reaching Anchorage's changes, but I think with these amendments we'll probably leapfrog it and do better than Anchorage, which is good. I encourage anyone who's interested to listen to the recording of that. Any questions on land use or other related subcommittees? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll move on to public comment. Again, because we have a packed agenda tonight, I'm going to be fairly strict on the 3-minute limit, but persons offering public comment must state their full name and address. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes, and it will be 3 minutes per person, and must be on subjects not listed on the agenda. Would anyone like to speak to public comment? Okay, I saw briefly, but it disappeared. There we go. Jen Wingard. Let's go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to introduce myself to anyone who wouldn't know that doesn't already know me, that I'm running for DBOS, and I am hoping to continue the community service projects I've already been involved with in the past. And since it's such a packed agenda, I'm going to just leave it at that.
Thank you, Jen. Definitely under 3 minutes. Much appreciated. Any other public comments? Okay, I'll leave it a few more seconds. I'm not seeing any other hands. Thank you. So we'll move on to old business. Agenda item LUC 2101-05, Girdwood Clinic update regarding case 2021-0035, design variance. So this is, I believe, an update rather than call for action, but I will let Deanna speak to this. Did you want to combine these two items, items 6 and 7?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate to combine the two. If
So I'll just formally state what. So we're going to combine for items 5 and 6, which are items LUC 2101-5 and items LUC 2101-6. So both on the update on Girdwood Clinic. Sorry, go ahead, Diana.
Hi, everyone. I am Deanna Navskar, and I'm here with Juan Lee, who presented a little bit earlier on the highway extension, and we are here to give a brief update about the Girdwood Health Clinic. And I am just going to turn it over to Juan to start the spiel.
Thanks, Deanna. And earlier I turned it over to Mark, so this is fair. So thanks for having us back again. We were at the Land Use Committee meeting last week on Monday, March 8th, and wanted to let everyone know that we're just having a month-long delay in the permitting for the Girdwood Clinic. So updated major site plan review at the Urban Design Commission, as well as a design variance. And we've just had to go back and relook at a couple things. As some of you may or may not know, the Urban Design Commission reviews projects, engineering, architectural, civil plans at 65% design. So they have to be, there. And also 95% landscaping design plan. So we have a couple tweaks to make, a couple modifications. So we're able to pull back the application, postpone it for 1 month. So instead of going to the Urban Design Commission for a public hearing on April 14th, we will be there in May. May 26th is the date. So we will be submitting an updated major site plan review. There will be a couple changes, and also for the design, there's a couple changes there. And like we did last month when we submitted the application, we will email GBOS the PDF like you see here on the screen. So you have like an early review of it, and then we'll come back in April actually, we'll come back in May, I think, and once it's processed and respond to any questions you may have prior to the public hearing. So that's all I really have. I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware of the slight delay in the schedule, about a month, 5 weeks actually, and but we're still tracking to get all the permits and start construction this summer.
Thanks, Juan. Can you, I probably didn't catch it in what you said. Can you say when you expect the new application to go in, on the updated application, so when it becomes public?
Right, so we need to submit the applications for completeness review this week. So we're working on a pretty tight deadline, and then they should be processed within the week after. And once they've been processed by the municipality, we will send you the digital copies.
Okay, so we'll see that before our next meeting.
Yep.
And then just you'll be presenting the meeting after that. I've got it. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. I'll get with Margaret and get on the agenda for next month. I think next month would probably work. If not, we'll be back in May as well, just to communicate any updates. And one quick thing is the postponement means that there will be a renoticing of the public hearing. So if you saw public hearings for May 14th, the municipality will be re-noticing for the public hearing. So just so there's no confusion, it's just a date change.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions from the board? Or any questions from the public? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, so let's move on to next item, which is item number 7. Doesn't have an agenda item list. Girdwood Bearware, Elena DuPont. Recommendations for changes to secure trash regulation zone, ordinance language, and or request for resolution of support for KTMA grant application. I'm not sure if the resolution of support should be an old business item or a new business item. Can we, Margaret, what's the status of that? Or Kyle?
Well, the grant application would have been due last Friday, so I'd probably say it's not an item at all.
Hi, Kyle. No, it is an item. We submitted our grant application and got permission from KMTA to submit support letters after the full package to accommodate the process for GBOS and some other delays.
Okay, gotcha. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So can you? So are we? Are we talking about both of those tonight? Because I don't think we've gone through the new business process for the resolution of support. So I know there've been some discussions with Margaret. Can you help us here, Margaret?
Right. What I wanted to let you know is that we can go ahead and introduce the resolution of support for KMTA. I kept it under the same heading because I just thought it was going to be helpful to tackle all of the Bearware stuff at the same time. But you're correct that that is not an old business item on its own yet. Okay. It's my hope that maybe we can add it onto the agenda for a work session that I think we're scheduling for the 30th.
Okay, so we're going to be
it as old business there.
Okay, so we're kind of slightly doing it out of order in terms of when it should be presented in tonight's meeting. So let's focus on the first part then. So Elena, do you want to speak to the recommended changes to the secure trash regulation zone ordinance?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm not exactly sure. I guess it's just an update. I mean, this was an agenda item last month, and we presented a document that included our suggested amendments to that ordinance, and then those suggestions have been forwarded to code enforcement, and also Mike and I had a follow-up discussion, I want to say 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago now, with John Weddleton, and he was going to have some action items going forward with that. I haven't heard from him. I don't know if he's on this call and could update if he has done anything. But that's the extent of my knowledge. It was forwarded. I've sent follow-up emails, and I haven't really had any follow-up. I'm not sure if GBOS is, I think, waiting to get final wording on that or those changes before submitting a resolution of support for them. So I don't know, that process stuff is not my expertise, it's yours. So that's all I've got for that.
Okay, I think my understanding is typically what we would do is if it's going to be introduced by an assembly member, we would wait until there's a draft available and then make any comments or resolution or recommendation on that. If for any reason it's not going to be proposed by an assembly member, we can actually submit requests ourselves as a reviewing body, so we can, or as an advisory body. So we would take that path if for any reason it wasn't being introduced by assembly members, but I believe it would be, so we can follow it with Assembly Member Weddleton.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. And then I didn't really follow everything about the resolution. I probably won't be available later in this meeting just due to like kid bedtime. So I thought all we were doing was introducing it, and then we're gonna have to have it follow up for later.
Yeah, so just from a formal point of view, it's listed under old business, but we're going to discuss it now, but technically the resolution of support for the KMTA grant application is new business, so we're not going to perform any action tonight.
Correct. And I can possibly wait until later if you need to bump it to new business. I may not be on.
I don't know if we need to formally decide it, but I think there's, at least informally, it's on the agenda, so we can probably discuss it now.
Oh, great. Well, I can be really fast then. Like I said, we already submitted our full request for KMTA for a grant for 2021. And sorry, Caleb is in my arms because it's Cora's bedtime right now. So, what I'm doing is hoping to get a resolution of support from GBOS for that grant submission. We've requested $3,000 from KMTA, of which we already have a fully secured $3,000 match for. We're asking for the funding to support Wind River Bear Institute returning for 2 weeks for summer of 2021. We were really pleased with working with him last summer, and so was Fish and Game, and they've suggested that if he spends time in Girdwood this summer, it would be most advantageous for him to come early summer to sort of set the stage for us. And we're also, in the absence of having a public event due to COVID-19, it is helpful. Wind Rivers, when Niels was here last summer, he was able to make 2 public presentations, and just sort of the nature of his work with the dogs and his business model in general is a really nice amplifier for some of our messaging and our shared mission. So we're really looking forward to the opportunity to work with him again this summer. So that's just pretty much the short summary of what we're asking for KMTA, and we're just looking for GBOS support for that grant application.
Right, so letter of support, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, any questions from the public? I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much for the update on the regulation changes and the introduction of the letter of support for the KMTA grant application.
Of course, thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Elena.
Thanks, everybody. Yes, bye, Caleb.
Bye, Caleb. Okay, thank you. So we're going at a good pace. Item number 8, GTC recommendations for GBOS vote to approve the Memorandum of Understanding with Alaska State Parks, Chugach State Park. Kyle, speak to this.
Yes, we have finally completed the MOU between Chugach State Parks and the municipality of Anchorage. And it recognizes the partnership between the Girdwood Service Area, HLB, and Chugach State Parks on managing of public recreation in our valley. We have a MOU very much like this with U.S. Forest Service, and so it is similar in nature. And but even it pertains more to us because of our direct border relationship with Chugach State Park and a good majority of our western trails leading into the park, Beaver Pond, California Creek, and Aves. And so this has been a agenda item or a task item for a long time for Girdwood Trails, and we're happy to have this together. And basically, this lines out a relationship that's recognized officially between all three entities on how we can work together, and gives guidelines about, you know, the fact that if we lead a trail project through grant funding, that trail is still the property of Chugach State Parks, and the improvements that we make, they retain ownership of. But we help them in many ways because the eastern flank of the park, is not as well funded as other portions of the park. So they're really dependent on groups like ours to help these recreation entities stay together. So we're excited to have this, and we're looking for the board to approve it tonight.
Okay, thank you. I have one question, then I'll open up to other questions. When you said three entities, that's between the municipality of Anchorage, Girdwood Valley Service Area, and the other, or is it? Because I'm confused by the two names, Alaska State Parks and Chugach State Park.
Well, yes, Alaska State Parks is the umbrella over Chugach State Parks. And so in particular, we're only talking about Chugach State Parks, but Alaska State Parks still is the management authority over that. And then the third entity would be Heritage Land Bank. Okay. But they're part of municipality. So you could say it's really agreement between the state and the muni in the long run, and then it outlines our departments within it.
Okay, so HLB being the landowner in some cases, but in many cases, us being the manager.
Correct. Yes, we have trails that go through HLB land that we manage, but the HLB land surrounds us.
Okay. Any questions, comments from the board? And I would entertain a motion to approve this MOU.
I make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding with the Alaska State Park, Chugach State Park.
Second.
Okay, I hear a motion and second. Any discussion?
We could add as written in the packet, or as provided in the packet, or something like that.
Okay, so do it by reference.
Yeah.
Okay, any other comments from the public? I'm not seeing any hands. That clock in the back, that ticking in the background is very disconcerting. It's almost like the Jeopardy music or something. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so we should move on to the vote. Kyle, can you roll call us, please?
Sure. Mike Edgington?
Yes.
Jerry Fox?
Yes.
Aaron Boone?
Yes.
Brianna Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for all the work, Kyle. Much appreciated. It puts us on a very positive footing going forwards. So we can move on to item number 9, Girdwood Forest Fair 2021. Karen Zaccaro and Tylee Bell presenting.
Hi, this is Karen Zaccaro. I don't think Tylee has joined us. If she is, she could pipe up. I'm just here tonight basically to give you an update. You know, with the world as it is, Girdwood Forest Fair is not confident in their direction yet for the 2021 fair, which would be July 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, if it moves forward. We are continuing to evaluate different options, including possibly having a full live fair, having a modified fair, or having a virtual fair. And I can say that every time we meet, the discussion changes a little bit as the landscape changes and knowledge changes and so forth. So I just wanted to just let you know that we're still talking about it. We're making sort of slow steps towards, you know, typical paperwork and permitting processing. Not every department in the muni and every permit we need is even interested in talking about making a permit for an event like that yet, but some of them are accepting of at least taking applications. So we're making those steps. At the same time, we are talking very seriously about what a modified plan might be, or there's always the option also that we may not be able to have a fair. So I'm just here to give you that update that we're still thinking about it, we're talking about it. but we haven't decided anything for sure yet. And we're open and interested to any questions or comments you have now, but right now we haven't made a decision on direction within our organization.
Okay, thank you, Karen. I do have a question about what's the kind of time scale for making a decision? I mean, when would be if it was going to go forwards? I mean, I'm not suggesting it would be. If it was going to go forwards the way it had in previous years, is there kind of a deadline if you have to make a decision by a certain date? Do you have anything planned in terms of like a go or no go?
Like an internal. There's the internal, like how much effort will we put towards it with the possibility that it could not be permitted. Okay. So there's that. I think really all those decisions probably have to happen sometime by May something. I don't see how we would get back, personally, how we would get past the end of May and still be unknowing of the direction, especially from the immunity standpoint of whether the event would be permitted.
Okay. Well, I think optimistically we'll know a lot more during April about where things stand and what the trajectory is. Thank you very much, Karen. Any questions from the board? Or the public? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Thank you again. Thank you very much for the update.
Sure, thank you for letting me.
We'll move on to item number 10, Girdwood Fire and Rescue updates and requests. Discussion and vote to approve funding options to replace engine 41. And then we have two other items, but let's start there.
So with we are Chief Weston is in the process of working out through AFD on the engine 41. Briefly, we've gotten 4 different sort of payment options. Their preference at this point is Pierce for their engine 41 replacement because all their apparatuses are Pierce, and they would like to keep the fleet the same. But they do need to go through the proper channels of the purchasing requirements, and so they are looking at that. But they are looking at they've heard from Pierce about how to pay for the engine. The most economical is to pay for the full engine up front because each engine does have a bit of customization to the owner as to what they want on it, how they want their pumps, how they want their radio, their technologies, things like that. So when Pierce makes an engine, it does put them on the hook that once they start making it and they produce it, it is specific to that department. So they really prefer to take the payments up front, so there's a considerable discount for that. So what I have learned on my end for the financing aspect about it is that we can take out a loan now with the way the interest rates are low. But it was advised that these interest rates probably aren't going to shift a lot, and if they do shift, it will probably maybe just be half a percentage point, or even if it went up 1%, it would still be very reasonable compared to where rates have been. And that if we were to do that, we could consider the option of just paying off the loan faster to make up that percentage increase. Whereas if you take out a loan now, you start paying principal and interest on that loan, and we don't have an engine in hand, or we haven't actually selected an engine to pay for yet. So it's kind of the chicken or the egg in the aspect of we want to find out the details, what provider they're going to go with, and then settle on what's going to be manufactured for Girdwood Fire, and then have that price, and then bring all the financing together. So at this point, that's where we're at.
Okay, so what's the sort of timescale for going through the procurement process and selecting an option here?
Well, I know when Chief gets back from leave, that's going to be one of her higher priorities, is to start pushing away at that. And we haven't bought an engine in 15 years and maybe 20. And so there's going to be a little bit of learning process there, but they can work with AFD. So I think over the next month, they're going to really get things rolling, and we probably should have an update at the next meeting as to what that all looks like.
Okay, great. So what I'm inferring from what you're saying is we're not necessarily looking for a motion tonight? No,
we're not. We will hold this as old business until we have everything together and we look like we're ready to get ready for financing.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. Any questions on that subtopic from the board or from the public? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so let's move on to our next subtopic, which is update on the MOA Girdwood Fire Department contract for EMS, and we got a little bit of this information beforehand. Is there anything more to add? Kyle?
The one thing I didn't mention is that Chief has been working with the AFD on just refining the contract language, and they're pretty close, and so that is a good thing, because that will go hand in hand with the EMS increase and tie each other together. So we're getting towards what I optimistically say is I can see the finish line. We just got a few more hurdles to jump over to get there in that aspect. So and related to the first quarter revisions there, the fire department does not have any revisions for the Girdwood service area, so the budget will stay as approved last year. Any revision will come from the EMS budget, which will be part of area-wide.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on these topics from the board or from the public? Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so let's move on to thanks again, Kyle, and thank you to Chief Weston for all the work on this. We'll move on to item number 11, review of Girdwood capital accounts and the Girdwood undesignated fund. Kyle again. Sure.
This is a request coming out of our year-end review for 2020 that we presented to the board at their last meeting, and a request to give an update on the capital funds for the Girdwood service area. So what I have here prepared is the available amounts. It doesn't mean that this is all the monies, but this is the money that's unencumbered at this point. I do have some notes about money that is encumbered or pending reimbursement. So I'll start with fire. Right now, fire has a undesignated or a capital account of available funds of $362,000 there. So we round up 363,000 available. And so we've already identified that would be needed for a substantial down payment on that new engine going forward. These funds, now keep in mind when I'm presenting to you, they do not include the contributions that are coming out of operating for the 2021 budget. We will move those most likely in second quarter of this year. Especially with the fire department, we'll probably move it as soon as we feel secure that EMS funding increase is coming. Parks and Rec, we have $402,000 available in that account. And we have a pending reimbursement of $236,000 that's coming from the state. So that is what we have paid out for the pedestrian flasher, and that's what we're going to get reimbursed. We have received the checks. It just needs assembly approval, which I think is going to be at their 23rd meeting. So we should be able to see those funds back into there. So that will give us a substantial kick back into the Parks and Rec capital account, which we can use towards our next capital project. And then street maintenance. Right now we have $272,000 available in there in that account. Let's say $134,000 has been encumbered in one account for the Allberg repave, and then another $307,000 has been encumbered for the Allberg pave. So those are funds that are encumbered right now for the project. It is below the engineer estimate, but we still see that we can move more funds if we need to for that project. It is out to bid now. We'll see what those bids come in at. And so, but we know we have the funds there to cover that project for there. In the cemetery, we just haven't released this. We just kept it in the cemetery fund. We just have a remaining $2,400 in there associated with when we did the pre-development work there. So these are a snapshot of the capital funds for Girdwood at this point in time. And then one other thing is we have an undesignated fund. We haven't had an audit. We won't have an audit until after first quarter. So I'm suspecting that this number will go up, but right now we know we have $276,000, let's say $277,000 undesignated right now for Girdwood. The numbers above are the numbers that we have to keep in reserve. One for our bond rating, and then our emergency fund for our operations. So we always know we have at least almost 600,000 sitting there for a flood event or whatever it may be that can get us going on response to an emergency event.
Okay, thanks, Kyle. I have a question about the repave allocations. If I recall correctly, one of those two is basically if we don't spend it on repave, we lose it.
Yes, the grant up here. So PW 14015, that we will lose. So that's why we have that there, right there. So most likely we will spend all those funds associated with this project, even that $10,000 first, and then we will dive into our contributions on the other one.
Okay, so that explains why there's two different buckets.
Correct. That's the state grant right there.
Yep, understood. Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Okay, everyone's very quiet tonight. Or everyone's on mute. Okay, any questions from the public? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Yes.
So we will move on to item 12, review of procedures for LUC GBOS topics, including planning applications out service area requests. I actually have something to point to. We can go to the packet. Probably at the very end.
Right, it didn't get incorporated into the packet yet, but we have it in the file.
Okay, so I'll just talk to this briefly. So we're kind of, one thing that's been, I think, noted by many people is we have kind of a traditional process that's a little complex in Girdwood of how the different committees and GBOS sort of relate to each other, and you know what if you're coming in with some item of business, what the path is. So one of the things I'm trying to do is with others is to try and make this simpler and end up with ideally a relatively straightforward guide that anyone can look at and makes things clearer both for the public and people bringing, for the general public, the community in general, and anyone bringing specific items in. So this is a very first draft of a sort of top level process. So sort of step one of the guide, and it's gone blank. I'm not seeing anything there, Kyle. Okay. I did briefly see it. Now it's disappeared again.
Let me go back and then I'll pull it back up and see what happens. How about now?
Great. Thank you. So think of this as the beginning of a pamphlet, a document. I'm going to try and keep it just to a couple of pages, and there'll probably be some diagrams in here as well. So this is kind of a review of really current state, and we're going to document what we currently do, and hopefully make it nice and clear. And then if we are going to make changes, we can make it from this. But basically, it's a four-step process for anything coming into the community for a public process. Step one is it clearly a service area topic, and there's a couple of pieces of code which describe exactly what those service area topics are, and some subset of these, if it's a trails issue, it will typically go through Girdwood Trails Committee first. If it's public safety, it will typically go through Public Safety Advisory Committee. If it's cemetery, it'll go through cemetery. There's also this weird thing in code of we actually have the power to relate to solid waste services, although it's also an area-wide function. So there's a piece of code, I think, which hasn't got updated, and as we review this, we'll probably get that code cleaned up as well. So typically something will go through a subcommittee if it falls within those, otherwise it goes straight to GBOS. Sorry, Erin, did you have a question on this?
Yeah, I was just wondering should roads be listed there too?
We don't have a subcommittee for roads. So this
Okay.
is the A to C part is just relating to subcommittees or the committees of GBOS.
Okay.
Anyway, so if it isn't service area, then there's also a chunk of things which come in which fall under sort of Title 21 land use. So, for example, the presentation by Girdwood Clinic earlier, that would fall under this. And there's a mandatory process where there must be a community meeting for some certain types of application, and then there are other applications where it's optional. We typically like people to come through the local process so we can as a community sort of look at things and understand them and ask questions, but it isn't actually required in code in every case. So some variance requests, for example, are not required in code, although plenty of people come through the LUC process. So there's another chunk of things there, and that will typically go through LUC, and then if there's action required, come through GBOS as well. And then bucket number 3, we just move down the screen a little. There's also a set of things which are very relevant to Girdwood, and you know, both residents, people who work here, people who own property here. So the example I like to use on this, which is a clear example, is things that are going on the Seward Highway. So, for example, you know, the issue of policing on the Seward Highway, which came up a couple of years ago, topics like that, they're extremely relevant to the community. So those will typically go through LUC as well. Sometimes they might go through some other body if they were particularly relevant. I can't think of any good examples, but I can think perhaps of, you know, some trail issue in Kern Creek or something like that. But we have this bucket of things which are very relevant to Girdwood and fall within the LUC Community Council responsibility. And then finally, we have things which come up from time to time, which we'd consider kind of something which is of general interest and not specific to Girdwood. So we've had a few issues over the last several years which fall into that category, and we do actually have a draft policy for, we call them out of area requests, but it's really not just out of area, because technically some of these other things like Seward Highway are out of area. But we do have a process written down for that. And the main step is to make sure that someone in the community can sponsor this and speak to it. And then again, this will typically go through the LUC process and occasionally go to GBOS for action. But anyway, this is kind of step 1. It's still very early days. There's nothing to approve or vote on. I just wanted to demonstrate we are making some progress on putting together a process and clearing it up, and hopefully having it easier to communicate with the public and ourselves as well, so we're consistent. Comments or questions? Erin, is that the same hand from earlier, or do you have another?
It's the same
You've been
hand,
working
but
on this as well.
It's the same hand, but I do have another comment. Thanks for putting this together, Mike. It is good to see it written down, and so we have something to start talking from. I am thinking that it would be good to list roads under the surface area topics, though, even if I guess it would go directly to the roads supervisor or Kyle. We probably want to say the road supervisor, just so, you know, if someone's, I don't know if this document will become something that people reference, but if they're looking, you know, if they say, I have a roads issue, what do I do? That it might be nice to have it shown there.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. So we can cover both kind of formal actions and other sort of, you know, methods of communication with the board. That makes sense, yes. Any other comments from the board or the public? Okay, we'll see this hopefully get better and better and clearer as time goes on. Let's move on to item number 13, application of the GBOS standards of conduct across committees and subcommittees. So I'm not sure who, maybe I'll speak to this, unless anyone else would like to. Erin would be my other choice, or maybe Margaret. So this, I think this came up, we adopted a standard of conduct or standards of conduct document. And I think there was some confusion as to whether it applies to all committees and subcommittees. And I don't think we made that very clear. when we incorporated it into our own documentation. So I think what the recommendation is here is just to clear that up. I think probably the easiest policy would just to make it sort of a blanket standard across all Girdwood public process if we follow this the standards of conduct document. But we should have that discussion, and maybe I would entertain a motion to clarify it. Do you actually have the document to hand, Kyle? I think it's on our website.
Kyle, you were muted if you were talking.
I'm sorry, I don't have that at hand, but you guys have a discussion. I'll dig it up.
Okay, great. I think we all know what's in it. Margaret.
Yeah, I just wanted to let people know that the confusion isn't anything about what the content is of the document. It really is the motion that the Board of Supervisors passed indicated that other committees and subcommittees would perhaps pass it as well or adopt it themselves, which sort of left open the possibility that they might want to redraft parts of it, or it just, I think it's cleaner if we just say it's there for them to use. And we've actually started putting it at the tops of their agendas, letting the public who attends know that the subcommittees all operate under those same code of conduct rules.
Thank you for that clarification.
I don't know if you need to make a specific motion exactly about that, or just, agree that this is what you intended.
I think because there's some confusion, it probably makes sense to have something formal.
Sounds good.
So I would entertain a motion to clarify the applicability of our standards of conduct across committees and subcommittees or Girdwood committees and subcommittees.
So moved. This is Brianna.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thanks, Erin. Any further discussion by the board?
Yeah, I guess so. My understanding was that we were, like you said, we were leaving it up to the subcommittees if they wanted to adopt it. So how are we clarifying it tonight? Are we saying that it is just adopted by all GVOS committees and subcommittees, or how are we clarifying it?
Yeah, I think that was the motion, that it would be adopted across the board by all of the GVOS and all its committees and subcommittees. Otherwise, it's just this, potentially it can just get changed for every committee.
Okay.
And that really makes no sense. I mean, I don't think there's anything controversial in it. It's a fairly straightforward clarification.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I personally, it's useful when you're chairing, because you can point to a document and you can use that language, and it's easier to make sort of judgments and decisions in a meeting if you have a document to point to, and a document which everyone has access to. And in theory, everybody has read before they join the meeting. I'm sure in practice that's somewhat limited. Any other comments or questions from the board or members of the public? If not, we can move to a vote. So Kyle, if you can do a roll call.
Sure. Mike Edgington?
Yes.
Jerry Fox?
Yes.
Aaron Boone?
Yes.
Brianna Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 14, agenda item LUC 2102-04. Discuss retiring of agenda items over 12 meetings in a pending state. This is another sort of an administrative process.
I can talk to you.
Staff want to talk to it? Yeah, thank you. Sure.
So we've brought this to both LUC and now GVOS in old and new business, and basically we're just looking for direction on how to deal with pending items. If you look down here at the bottom of the agenda, we have several pending items that are over 12 meetings old. We had previously presented it as 12 months, but we realized that there is a possibility you may not have a meeting 1 month. So we wanted to make it 12 meetings along. So this just gives us direction that what we would do on our side if this was to be passed is at the 12-month mark, if we haven't heard from, we would reach out to the petitioner. If the petitioners would said, oh, well, we are still pursuing that, we would request them at the next meeting to either give us something in writing or be in person just to give an update to both LUC and GBOS about the item going forward. Most likely LUC for sure, so that they can give an update, and then we would start the clock over. Or at that point, the petitioner, if they didn't respond, we just remove it, and if they told us to pull it, we would pull it. So it just gives direction that when we go to put it in pending business, we let the petitioner know how long it will sit there until it's removed. And if it does get removed, they have to start over as new business and go through the steps again.
Thanks, Kyle. So that's the way I think about it. Is it's a it gives us a clarity on when something ages out from the new business process. So when it'd have to come back in as new business, and they can't just sort of piggyback on the original new business presentation. And 12 meetings, I think, is a very generous amount of time. Erin.
Was this voted on at land use, or are we trying to vote on it tonight?
It was voted on land use and it did pass.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to retire all agenda items that are over 12 meetings long in the pending status.
Thank you, Jerry. Any second?
I second that.
Thank you, Brianna. So let's move on to any further discussion on this topic from the board. Is that another comment, Erin, or is your hand still up? Okay. Any questions from or any comments from the community? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. So we have a motion on the table. I think we should move to a vote. Kyle, can you do a roll call, please?
Sure. Mike Edgington?
Yes.
Jerry Fox?
Yes.
Aaron Boone?
Yes.
Brianna Sullivan?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, so now we can move on to our new business items. Item number 15, agenda item LUC 2103-05, request for GBOS resolution of support for long plat for Alpine View Estates, Tract 1, and lots 1 to 8. I think Tim Cabana is presenting this.
Hello, hey, this is the same plat you guys have seen before. And I'm still, I don't know, I'm still struggling with the community. And Kyle was at the last meeting on Thursday that I was with, and I think he kind of can understand that, I don't know, there just seems to be an awful lot of negativity about passing this plat. They're giving me, and it actually was Dave Whitfield, one of the directors of the planning department, sir. It was his idea to run this down the west side of the property, and then they didn't like the corner down there. And this is for the road that nobody in Girdwood wants. Okay, now, so the road that we voted on, I came to you guys, I don't know, in November or something. And I took them the letter from the GBOS. I took them the land use results, and during that meeting, and I don't know, maybe Kyle can help me out and let me know exactly if I'm misquoting this, because I didn't write it down word for word. But essentially, someone at the community in long range planning said that Girdwood people don't really know what they want and what's best for them, and that we need to keep this road on here because it's best for them, or something like that. And I was kind of taken back by the fact that they don't trust us to know what's best for ourselves, and they're smarter than us or something like that. And then there was the only one that at the meeting, I think that was clear on it, the DOT, Shannon, can't remember her last name. she did say that even though they have concerns over, like trying to make that corner back there, and that they would, with lots of discussion through DOP, they would accept this plat. So that's a big step, because no matter what Anchorage does, if DOT doesn't accept it, then it still gets shot down. And I did agree to round, and I have Tony Hoffman redrawing this. So this is going to get resubmitted again with a minor change on lot 1, the northwest corner. We're going to round that so that that road can make that corner. It might have to be, I think they're thinking that they want to go around that corner at 30 or 40 miles an hour or something. And that just doesn't make sense anyway, because it's you can go around a corner real fast, just to slam on the brakes and stop anyway. So that's where we're at. And then the rezoning, I got the thing in here to clean up this drunken zoning line here so that I can have plats with you can't record plats that cross a zoning line, and that zoning line is impossible to work with, because imagine all the corners that you'd have and all those round things there. So it would be impossible. And when it gets right down to it, the GR4SL and GR4 are essentially the same thing. One of them is GR4 is allowed, 4 to 8 units per acre. They're both allowed 4 to 8 units per acre, and GR4 is allowed up to 20 units per acre, 4 to 20, with a conditional use permit. And I didn't even care if they just turned the whole thing into SL, because I have no intention of going more than 8 units per acre on them anyway. So I don't know, and I'm confused as to what I think they agreed to that, and they asked people if they had problems with the zoning. I don't think the zoning had the issues. No one was really against changing the zoning, but they still are holding their boots to the ground on this new Girdwood access road. So, Kyle, do you remember what they said there? You were at the meeting when I was at, I think it was Thursday.
Well, I definitely didn't hear him say that Girdwood doesn't know what they're talking about, or that Girdwood, if anything, I deal with them more. I think they have more respect for Girdwood than mostly any community council, because of the organization. So I think what they really recognize is that the area plan currently still calls out that access route, and that the area plan, if an amendment is going to happen to the area plan, it needs a more formal process just besides the LUC and the GBOS, and that the area plan is currently in process of being rewritten. And if it's identified through there, then that works. Now, it's still also called out in the area and transportation plan too, which DOT also calls out in their planning as well. So those areas would all have to be addressed with this road access and the secondary access as it goes through it. I think the more concern I heard from traffic about this plat was the topography of that corner where that road comes in. It's very severe and it's very deep. As Tim has said, anything can be engineered and can be built in there, but the planning and traffic department had concerns about how steep those, as you can see, those topography lines are in that section, in that corner, as to how that works. And then the other part about this too is it's a partnership deal where Tim would give up a portion of his land and HLB would have to give the other 30 feet, because the intention of this right-of-way is to be a 60-foot right-of-way for the secondary access. So traffic had some issues along those lines, but those weren't directly focused on. I think more I didn't feel like there was any objection to the replat of the line there. Along those lines that I heard, I think people were just more focused on the secondary access and how it's called out in the area plan.
Yeah, I think it was the long range planning person that said that, we need to keep this for our, it's in our best interest, something like that. I mean, I remember that sticking out there, and I did agree to cut that corner down there, so that will get redrawn, and And the problem with cutting it too much is there's also a rule about a 1 to 3 width to length rule. And if I cut that corner too much to do away with all that topography, then I fall under that rule. So one rule ends up causing another rule in conflict. So we're going to redraw that, send it in again, and I'm sure we'll have another meeting with I don't know, I think there was 13 people on that last meeting, and it just, I don't know, it just seemed like I wasn't going to get support from the planning department on this, no matter what I did. That's kind of, I don't know. Maybe you didn't get that. Maybe you didn't get that feeling, Kyle. I sure did.
Okay, thanks, Tim. I've got a couple of questions, but I see Jerry had his hand up, so I'm going to let Jerry go first.
Well, I kind of put my hand down, but I'll ask the question. Kyle, one of the concerns that I have here that I'm sure Tim has is that this idea that you have to change the Girdwood area plan before they're able to plat it. Well, the Girdwood area plan isn't going to be done for years. So to me, that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, can't the community say we're going to allow this in the new area plan, or come up with some, if they're going to say the Girdwood Board of Supervisors isn't a viable body to make this decision, then who is?
Well, the Girdwood Board of Supervisors is a viable body to carry that change forward. Just because you put in a resolution doesn't mean it's going to automatically happen. Now it needs to be petitioned through the process to get that alignment out of there. And so that will require an amendment to the Girdwood area plan in order to make that work. So probably the next step is, if the board wants to keep pushing this, is to meet with planning directors and to find out the steps to remove all that secondary access language from the necessary areas, so that it frees them up to approve this plat without having to deal with this secondary access. So I think that would be the next step on behalf of the petitioner for the board to carry that forward.
Yeah, well, that sounds great. I mean, I'm kind of banging my head against the wall as to what to do next, and I've been trying anything. So, I mean, at one point I was going for a variance, and then they talked me into, trying it another way with one of them had a going across the property down on the southern part, just some kind of an easement. Then it went away after 20 years or something. And then I think it was Dave Whitfield came up with the idea of running along the western line. So we redrawn it that way. And then he's like, well, we don't really like that. And I'm like, this was your idea, Dave. And he's like, yeah, well, I didn't say exactly that. And I go, well, you said the western side. How would it be drawn if this is not exactly that? So, yeah. And kind of like, and Kyle, if you got some ideas of how I can move this forward, I would sure I would be all ears. But, I mean, if I don't get this at least going, scheduling for the Planning and Zoning Commission, I'm going to be not be able to do this summer. I mean, we're getting into April, and and I still have to, I'm going to come back. I'll be back on the agenda for forever until I get this done, I guess. So, anybody got any ideas?
So, well, I've got a couple of specific technical questions, and then a more general one about process. I'll just ask my technical questions first. Where the boundary is, along the bottom where the tree boundary is, you have current zoning GR2 and current zoning GR2 SL. That's GR4, correct? That's just a typo on the plan. Yeah. So my secondary thing was GR4. I know you've mentioned single family homes, but my understanding of GR4 is it's primarily multifamily. And I think
you can't do single. They're not going to allow single family or duplex.
Right, but isn't there a lot size issue with that? I think it's on smaller lots of less than 20,000 square feet. You can have single family homes. That's my understanding of GR4.
Well, the Chapter 9 has different things in it, and they're conflicting. And one of them says if your lot is under 12,500 square feet, then it can't be multifamily, and the minimum lot size is 10,400 square feet. But then in another place in the plan, it says that you can't have single family or duplex on it at all. So,
yeah, well, I see a section that says clearly you can have single family or duplex if the particular parcel is less than 20,000 square feet. But I noticed that all of these are greater than. So I mean, the way I read the code, it's consistent. But I mean, obviously, I'm not making the determinations.
The page before that one you're looking at the tables. The tables do say you can have it, but then there's another page that says you can't.
So do you have a determination? Because I mean, you know, planning gives a determination on this. Do you have a determination that the use you're suggesting works for this plat?
I'm trying. You know, I'm going to redraw it again and cut that corner and see if that makes them happy.
Well, I mean, independently of the road,
people would be happier with it cut, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Independently of the road issue, I'm just saying, because you're saying about single family homes, but it definitely, to me, it looks like the code won't allow single family homes the way I've got it drawn here.
No. But you see, if I make it, I can't make them smaller. If I try to make them smaller, then they won't fit the 3-to-1 length per width rule. So this is as small as I can make them.
Okay. And given the road configuration, yep.
Given the road configuration and stuff, you know, and they're just not going to let me. I mean, I've been told by them anyway. They're just not going to let me do houses or duplexes on this. So they have a 5. The one of the plans says, the Girdwood area plan, I think, says a minimum of 5 units per acre on this property, and the chapter 9 says no less than 4, I think it is. So so I have to build at least 4 units per acre on any piece here. So if you look at the way I've gotten them drawn, most of them are about 3/4 of an acre. So that would be, 4 units per acre would be 3 duplex, and anything over a duplex, So
okay, well, again, that's kind of a detail that I just want to make sure that I'm just seeing what I'm hearing and seeing seems to conflict with my understanding of code, but I'm not the professional here. So I'm sure you've got advisors, and the planning department can make a better determination than I can. Then I have some more general stuff about the road and the area plan issues, but I'm going to hand it over to Erin, who has had her hand up patiently for a while.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I haven't been intimately involved with the area plan update, so I was just wondering if this access from the old area plan has been discussed, and if there's been any talk at all about it.
Oh, actually, that's what I was going to talk about. Great segue. Do you mind if I address this? So yes, it has, and I think that's going to be a fairly major topic of discussion when it goes through public, the next phase of public discussion. So we will have the plan. I'm speaking on behalf of the Emerging Girdwood group. At the moment, our plan is to have a land use map out in the next couple of months, a draft land use plan, and get public feedback on that. And one of the things that probably is going to touch on is second access, about whether it's whether it's something the community supports or not. And definitely as we finish the plan process, it's one of the major topics. We expect there to be quite robust community discussion. So my sense is, and I know Jerry is less optimistic than I, and has it years and years before, we'll have an updated plan. I mean, I don't think it's that long. I think we're talking about it being in the municipal process early next year. I think that's a realistic goal, definitely by middle of next year. So I don't see it as sort of a 4 or 5 year exercise. I see it as probably a 12-month exercise. And my sense is it's having a sort of isolated, attempted to have sort of an isolated action just on this one topic when there's already a broader community discussion of whether the second access road is something the community wants at all going on in parallel. It's probably premature to have this sort of an isolated small discussion when there's a bigger contextual discussion going on.
Yeah, but you know, I mean, you're I think being optimistic, thinking we're going to get done in 12 months, and hopefully we will. But that still shoots me down for doing this summer. So,
but I don't think there's any way you're going to get this. I mean, my sense is there's no way this is going to get done this summer because just an area plan amendment, which would be required, is going to be a multi-month process.
Not necessarily. All they have to do is support. All they have to do is accept, you know, that corner can be made. You know, I mean, or, you know, they don't absolutely have to have this thing go through this property. You know, I mean. That's another thing that I was talking to them about. There's you know, there's 4 other roads that dead end on Heritage Land Bank land, and you know, and I did bring that up to them. You know, again, I mean, if you look at the plans, one of them they're all approximate areas and things, and one of them has, you know, one of them has it drawing through Kyle's house, and the other one basically has it going through my daughter's house, and the southern end of this property, and so I mean, which one do you believe, and why am I being held to something that is not exactly even on my property? And there's never been any study for this road done to have it even, you know, remotely close to being accurate, you know. So
to play devil's advocate, Tim, you're suggesting that the best, you know, in order to develop that property, if there's a secondary access road, it should come out at the end of Turin or Carlina or Virgin Creek Trail instead.
I'm just saying, if they wanted to in the future put in some emergency road or something, even at the end of Alpena right there, you know, where I extended Alpena, they could put a gate there, and they could, you know, if you look at both of those, they come a lot closer to the end of Alpena than they do this property I'm trying to plat, you know. So they're holding me to something, you know, and I'm giving them a way that works. They're saying that corner's too tight and they can't build that, but they can build that. They just don't want to build it because it'll be expensive. But the whole road is going to be horribly expensive. I mean, You're looking at $70, $80 million road here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it's a two-lane paved federal standard road, it's a lot of money. Although, you know, if it was, then the federal government would be paying most of it if it ever happens. Jerry, you have a question.
Well, no, I just have a comment on that subject. I personally believe that I will never see that road in my lifetime. And I believe that very strongly. That is so expensive, that just isn't going to happen. I mean, everybody can want a secondary access, but, you know, fiscally, that is not going to happen. You know, and we should be looking at other ways to make our community stronger, like verifying the Glacier Creek Bridge is structurally sound, and ways we can spend money so that we can get out of this valley if we have an emergency. But to have a pipe dream that we're going to build that road seems ridiculous to me. And that's, I'll end my thought.
Yeah, and another thing, Jerry, there is an airport and 2 heliports on the other side of that bridge. So it's not like there's not an emergency access, even if the bridge does wash out. And then, you know, and if that bridge, we have something like the 64 earthquake that takes that bridge out, it's also going to take out every other bridge on the way to Anchorage or wherever, you know. And so, you know, in Glacier Creek, I mean, I know at least 5 contractors that could go down there and put a temporary road across that river in one day with a bunch of culverts and a few, you know, pieces of equipment. So Girdwood's very versatile. They're very capable. They're not going to get stuck, you know, and people aren't going to lose their lives. Where people lose their lives are on the Seward Highway. And I ran this by, I called up Francis, because he seems to be the one I'm having the most problem with on this thing. And I tried explaining that to him, the amount of money that this road would cost. We could, you know, put a barrier down the middle of the Seward Highway all the way from Bird Flats to Bird Flats to Potter Flats, and stop losing people on the highway every year. And I also pointed out to him that, you know, Girdwood loses, you know, we're less than 1% of the population of Anchorage, but it's not just less than 1% of the people dying on that road are from Girdwood. There's a large percentage of the people that we lose on that road are from Girdwood.
Okay, Aaron. And then
Yeah,
Kyle.
I wanted to add, I personally don't see that road going in either. I think there's many other reasons why it wouldn't, environmental reasons, and it's a lot of people's favorite ski meadows that would get ruined by a road. But I also don't feel totally comfortable going outside the public process. And, you know, we have a process right now, the area plan's being updated. And so I feel like it should at least be, you know, go through our normal public process, get input from the public, because at some point in the past, someone thought this was important. So it's just my 2 cents.
And that's exactly what the long range planner said, that even, you know, even if Girdwood voted, you know, to not have this road, that they thought that, you know, we just basically, it was for our best interest. And, you know, that's why I'm trying to work with them and extending, if you go back to the plat there, so we can kind of see the plat. If you go back to that, you can see that there's an intergovernmental permit that we did to make Barron Avenue. And all we would be doing is extending it. Right now it stops right there where it's not shaded. All we'd do is they would take 30 feet from my side of the property up to where it stops being shaded, and then extend it to Alyeska Highway. And then with rounding that corner a little bit, that would give them away. Okay, so they would have their way without holding up my plat and holding me hostage on this thing.
Okay, I just got thanks, Tim. I'm not sure I agree with your estimate of $80 million to build that road, but I should point out that $80 million is about the cost of buying every residential household east of Glacier Creek their own helicopter. So maybe that's another alternative solution when we look at that. I'm going to open up to the public. Any questions from the public? And Kyle, I see you're at the head of the queue. Your name's there first.
Yeah, you know, the one thing about planning staff is that they work off approved plans by the community, no matter how old those plans are. And in this case, you know, we have an old plan here. And so they're stuck with that in there. And so the only way for them to get around not in some way dedicating a portion of this plat towards the road is for it to be pulled out of the plan. So they kind of, they need that in order to make that decision. And they still can't change it when we have you know, a select few who vote upon something and approve it, and all of a sudden that they can't see that as the will of the community. So it is a difficult position to get through. You know, one thing they did identify with Tim was, would he consider using lot 3 for this easement to go through there? And Tim's in a hard spot because he's trying to maximize you know, his investment on this property, and lot 3 is a valuable lot, you know, but that would help to alleviate a lot of these issues that they're having, especially with that far corner and the way it bends down there. So it's it's a, you know, catch-22 in the way this works here in that aspect. So really what's just really hampering is that there's a approved plan that planning needs to abide by, and that's what's causing the issue here. And if that can get removed from the plan, then, you know, it can alleviate for him. But like Aaron said, there has been a public process that's approved that, and there's a new planning process going on now.
Yeah, and they you know, all they'd have to do is go ahead and accept this extension of the intergovernmental permit and that corner down there, and then they could support it, you know. But I don't think they want to support that, because it would look nicer if they just went right through lot 3. And I'm just not going to agree to that, you know, because you know, I would have to redraw this whole thing all over again, simply because the way I have this drawn is a shared access driveway off of between lot 1 and 2, and between lot 3 and 4, and between lot 5 and 6, and between lot 7 and 8. So if I just gave them lot 3, as they're talking about, well, how is that going to work with the shared driveway for lot 4 also? And there's other rules about you can't have direct access to a collector road. So I would have to build off of the collector road. I would have to build an access road on each side of it. That would take up the entire property.
Okay, I see Kaylee. Kaylee, you have your hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was just trying to, well, actually, I was looking over some of the packet from land use and looking at this, and I just had a quick sort of question, Tim. I saw that there were 2 maps, and one with the drunken line and the one that is straight. And you mentioned that the curved line was to protect the old growth trees, but that the trees were not actually in that line. Do you have like an overhead photo or something like that?
There was an overhead that showed where the trees actually were, and it pretty much follows the new lines.
And then, is that in the packet? I don't know. I just
right there it is.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. And then my other, I presumably this was an issue, you know, in 2000, you know, 5 or 2 or whatever back in the day. So
you know, I went back through the all the 178 pages of this whole land trade and the rezoning of all this stuff. It was a complex 5-year process to do it, and to get this multiple rezoning to get this done. And I went through every single one of the comments from every single department, and not one of them had an issue with the Girdwood access road. And it's in the packet at the very end, and under agency comments. So, and there was literally no opposite. There was one person on Timberline that thought we were going to build fourplexes right behind their house. They were confused in the language. Language was confusing. That was the only comment from the public even against this. So, and you can see with that, where the trees are. That's where the new line is essentially drawn right there.
Yeah, thank you. I've just meant, so you mean there weren't any comments, you know, historically? Are you talking about with this sort of presentation?
There was, and I've been asked that I was asked that again at that meeting that Kyle was at about what the agency thought about this stuff. And I told him, I said, I don't believe that they ever even brought it up. So I went back through and I literally read the 178 pages from one end to the other, and it was never brought up. And all the agency comments were no comment, or we don't have any objection. And that was from every agency that you can imagine.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I see Shelley Roughton, Rachel B, have a comment.
Yeah, I'd just like to answer that. Tim, if you will look at AO 2005-072 substitute on page 62 at the bottom, it is a planning memo regarding the trade and the terms under which they would accept the trade. And it does talk about that at the bottom, number 1. And I can read that if you like. It has been talked about.
I read the all of the comments from the agencies, and that was the question I was brought up. What did the agencies say?
This was like a multi-page memo from planning, and it says the municipality and the applicant must coordinate to identify a suitable area for the future right-of-way dedication for the East Valley Access Road, which will enter the site as Cami Way north of the stream. This right-of-way needs to include sufficient area to accommodate traffic conveyance, design, speed, geometry, snow storage, and additional access points, pedestrian amenities, and landscaping related requirements. Yeah. I don't know how that ball got dropped, but that was in 2005.
Well, that was, yeah, I don't remember that exactly, but if it's in there, it's in there. I read through all of that and I must have skipped through some of that, but and that's what I am doing with extending that intergovernmental permit. You know, it's what it comes down to is we're arguing about whether or not they can make that corner or not. So,
okay, thanks for that information, Shelley. Okay, so we're obviously not doing any action.
No, this is
meeting.
I'll be back. I have to put this on old business and come back next month.
Okay. As I said, from my perspective, there's a broader community discussion going on in the update of the area plan, and it seems to me a little premature to go through. Well, not premature, but it seems like this process is kind of short-circuiting that, and I understand why. You know, the sooner you get an answer and can start on this project, the better. I understand that, but at the same time, it's been many years, and waiting one more year doesn't seem to me, because I'm not, it doesn't affect me one way or the other really, but to me, waiting one more year to engage a public process doesn't seem that terrible a choice. But it's obviously not affecting me in the same way as it's affecting you. Erin, you had a question.
Yeah, just one other question about what Kaylee was asking about that the squiggly line was supposed to protect some old growth trees. I'm trying to understand how the new straight line plays into that. What changes there?
The straight line, all it does is make it the plat. It's really difficult. You can't plat across zoning lines, so that's just a municipal rule, and they're not even actually supposed to make tracks with 2 zoning areas in it. Somehow that slipped through the cracks. So all this is doing is straightening out those lines so that we can have straight lines on the lots. And there really isn't, the difference is the GR4 is allowed up to 20 units per acre, which you're not allowed to build that much anyway, because you can't, because of all the requirements for so much percent of this and so much percent of that and all the other things that are required. But you couldn't possibly, I don't know how you get over 10 units per acre, so it's kind of a moot point anyway.
So does the new straight line, does it go all the way to those other lots, the 33, 32, 31, the new proposed zoning line?
You have to go back to that, yeah. Yeah, you see that.
Sorry, these files are so big. There we go.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah, and you'll just see is all it does is so the ends of lots, like lot 3 has that line going right through the middle of it on the side of it, and it also makes the lot illegal because now it's with that lot in there, it would be more than 3-to-1 length to thing, and then the other one, you know, that makes a curved line, and so the other 2 lots too. It affects like 3 or 4 lots there.
Okay.
And straightening out those lines, and like I say, what we're talking about is nothing here. We're talking about, you know, 4 to 8 units per acre, or more than 8 units per acre, which isn't possible anyway. And I don't care. I said, just make the whole thing SL. I don't care, you know. So
Yeah,
the whole zone can go away for all I care.
that clarifies it. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone? Any other comments from the public? If not, we can. Thank you very much, Tim. We can move on to the next item.
Yep.
And we're going to have this discussion again next month. Okay. Item number 16, discuss writing letter of or GBOS resolution of support addressed to MOA traffic engineer requesting the existing yield signs be replaced with stop signs at the following intersections: Loveland Alyeska View, Alpina Timberline, Gustad Timberline, and Alta Timberline. Kyle, do you want to talk to this from the road's perspective?
This is in request to citizens requests, and then also observations that I have had with the growth in traffic on these 2 main collector roads, both Alyeska and Timberline. We would like the traffic department to replace the yield signs with stop signs so that people will come to a full stop. Our most recent issues have been associated with Loveland and Alyeska View, where Loveland crosses over into Alyeska's Day Lodge parking lot, the lower entrance, and people rolling through there, and sometimes not seeing people who are coming downhill. And so we have a particular issue there, which we did address and we cleared. Most recently, we got in there, removed the snow berm, and then limbed a bunch of tree branches to open up that yield sign, but that yield sign is still buried behind a tree. And so we do recognize that it should be a full stop, especially in the winter when berms can get high and it takes us a while to get back there to maybe mitigate the berm. So we want to get a letter of a resolution of support from GBOS to put this request forward to MOA traffic. This process has worked in the past for us to get no parking signs placed on Echo and Garmisch, and go through the same steps here. So that's what we're proposing, and we think it's about time maybe switch those signs out.
Thanks, Kyle. I mean, I was approached by a member of the public who has concern there, and another member of the community who was actually injured in an accident there when they were T-boned by a car that rolled through the junction. And should also point out there is a school bus stop in at the same location.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think the Loveland intersection is particularly problematic in winter because it effectively acts like a 4-way, with the access to the resort parking lot, and it's kind of uphill and snowy. So there's an incentive, I think, for some people to keep momentum going across that junction. Okay, Erin, so you have a comment.
Yeah, I'll just say I've witnessed that Loveland Alyeska intersection firsthand. I didn't realize it was a yield sign, but I come down Alyeska there, and I've more than once I've seen people roll through there, and I'm just surprised, like, what, no stop. So I'm definitely supportive of that. I don't have firsthand experiences with the other ones, but I'm sure that they're similar.
Any other comments from the board, Brianna?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Kyle for your time with that, and I have experiences at all of those places, but especially that one that becomes a 4-way as people come out of the Day Lodge parking lot and often aren't locals, so they don't really know to look all the ways. And it was really icy earlier this winter, and I bike that section a lot, and I'm always gripping either my steering wheel if I'm driving or looking all ways I can as a biker, because I know that not everyone's looking for me.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board or the public? Okay, thank you. So we'll discuss this again next month. And I think there'll be more members of the public present to discuss this as well next month. Let's move on to item 17, Girdwood Trail Easement Program Funding. Kyle, I think we can get through the next two items in the next 15 minutes, but if this takes too long, we may interrupt to formally extend the meeting.
Sure.
Kyle.
We're putting this on the agenda as new business. The Girdwood Trails Committee is considering doing an easement for the Stumpy's Winter Creek Trail, and they are moving through that process. And so I wanted to give an update to GBOS because we may return next month to ask for funding if we were able to pull proposals together. It may be more likely when we go that route, but the Girdwood Trails Committee is motivated to start establishing their trails in easements and going through that process. And the first one they're going to start with is Winter Creek or Stumpy's Winter Trail.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this item? Brianna, is that from the last item in your hand, or is that for this one? So your hand up is Brianna. Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
That's okay. Any other discussion on this item? Okay, again, I look forward to discussing this next month. Item number 18, new banner display at Lions Club Park. Kyle.
So we are working with Lions Club and Rotary on establishing a permanent banner display within the boundaries of Lions Club Park. Right now we have a system out there that works off of the cottonwood tree, and we've lost several cottonwood trees on that corner through the years. And the system works sometimes. If you get really good blow, then the banner system doesn't work so well. Rotary especially has identified that this is a good community project. Those banners get used. There's one out there right now by the Alaska State Department of Transportation for impaired driving. And so we are going through the steps on that. And most likely at next month's meeting, I'll probably bring a proposal to do the engineering to install this, and then we would work with Rotary and Lions Club, and they would help to fund a portion of building this. And so, so next month I'll probably have a proposal for you to do the engineering specs on developing this banner display system.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or comments or thoughts on this? From the board or from the public? Okay, thank you, Kyle. So move on briefly to item 19, the written reports. Any questions or comments from the board or the public on the written reports that are at the end of the packet? I'm not seeing any. I should say I do read them every time, so I don't have any comments or questions because most of the material we've covered already elsewhere, but they do get read. Okay, thank you. We've reached the end of the agenda, so I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I would make a motion to adjourn. I will make one comment about the written reports. The bottom of the budgets where we get into parks, it says 2020 budget. It should say 2021.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, see, I don't read them as carefully as you do, Jerry. Then.
And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
And we'll do a voice vote. All those in favour? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody. Long agenda, very efficiently done.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good chair.
Bye.